Today we're talking about Vinland Saga, something that has been requested of me for a long time, and I will say that I enjoyed this quite a bit. I actually enjoyed this a lot more than I thought that I would. So I'm pretty new to reading manga. I've only been actually reading it for a couple of years now, and I started reading it and talking about it here on the channel with Berserk. And as soon as I started reading that, as soon as I started reading manga on the channel here, I immediately started getting requests for Vinland Saga. And I have been putting it off for a couple of years now. At least it feels like it's been a couple of years. And to be honest, the one and only reason that I have been putting off reading Vinland Saga is because it is about Vikings. That's not to say that I dislike Vikings, but Vikings kind of like took over the zeitgeist there for a while. Everything was about Vikings. Every show was about Vikings. Video games were about Vikings. You know, Elder Scrolls, yeah, let's make a Vikings themed one. Assassin's Creed, we'll go Vikings this time. Like everything. It was so like you couldn't go anywhere or look anywhere without it being Vikings. And don't get me wrong, I love Vikings. I was all in. When that craze took over, I was right there at the front of the line. But there is a such thing as too much of a good thing. So by the time people are like, why don't you read Vinland Saga? I'm like, you know what? If I have to see another thing about Vikings, I think I'll lose my mind. So no, thank you. And now I have pretty much purged Vikings from my entire life for a couple of years now. So I was ready to get back into it by the time I picked this up. And I was like, I think I've abstained from Vikings long enough that I can go ahead and get back into it. And I must say, it was great, and I quite enjoyed it. So let's talk about it. But before I do that, I do want to say, spoiler warning for the video. I'm not going to really go beat by beat. This is going to be kind of a general overview of the war arc, but I'm going to discuss it with zero concern for spoiling plot beats, if that makes any sense. So like I said, this was pretty great, and it had me pretty much from chapter 1. Pretty much the second that Thorfinn goes vaulting over the moat, slashes onto the gate with his knives, climbs up it, and then just slaughters everybody inside, I was like, well, damn. Okay, then. Like, this is pretty intense. Like, intense on just in fun action. I don't even know. I was hooked. Consider me all in from that point. And also, I have absolutely no idea what I was expecting with this, but this isn't anything like what I was expecting. This is considered one of the big three, and it is recommended as such alongside of Berserk and Vagabond. So I was expecting something much darker, grittier. I don't know. In terms of tone, I was expecting something very different than what we got. The tone of this is very light and fun, almost silly at times. It almost felt like a seinen manga with kind of like the spirit of a shonen throughout. It was, I don't know, the tone, not that it's not a mature manga, not that it's not tackling mature content and themes and ideas throughout, but there's just a fun, light-hearted silliness to a lot of the beats of it. And there's a tone to this that I was not expecting at all. And yes, we're talking about a manga about a boy whose father was killed, and now he's forced to work for the man who killed his father. And he's stuck in his group, and all he wants is revenge, and there's murder, and there's bloodbaths, and there's all kinds of stuff. And at the same time, I just described it as fun. Like, you know what I mean? But it is. It really legitimately is. And it was wild. Anyway, and then there's the art. And I always, if I'm going to talk about a manga, and I always say this, it's essentially a picture book. So if you're going to read a book that is nothing but pictures, it's not 100% necessary that the art is good, but gosh, it's a nice bonus when it is. And this is great right from the rip. Like, right from page 1, it is really, really stunningly good. Might not be the hyper detail that you're going to get in like an Inoue or a Miura. It might not be that level of great, but gosh darn it if it isn't good. And it portrays like action extremely well. It portrays like momentum and impact very well. He's got a good handle on what he's doing here, at least in that regard, and he does an absolutely great job of it. Then, like I said, it's great from the rip. Like right from page one, it's great. It's not one of those manga that it's like, no, this is really great art and he's a really great mangaka, but you got to really wait a few volumes for the mangaka's skill to kind of grow into his ambition. Think Berserk or something like that. No, he's worked out all of the kinks in his style before he ever started working on this one. And I think this was, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is only the second thing he's ever done. I think that Planets, which I also have because that's a Patreon pick for this month, what I haven't read yet, but that'll be very much next up on my list. Anyway, I think that was the first thing he ever did, if I'm not mistaken, unless he was like, an artist working underneath another mangaka and he got a bunch of experience that way. I don't know. I'm just saying, I think this is the second thing, period, that he's ever done, and it's great. It's really, really good. From the jump. Then, moving on from there, there's the story and the characters. And Thorfinn, in particular, is a really nice protagonist. He's really good in that role. Both in the fact that you feel for him. You're on his side. You kind of sympathize with him. He is the young boy. He's the boy who's had his father been killed, and then we're going to jump back in time, and then we're going to see his flashback, and we're going to get to see his childhood, and he's on a revenge story. All of these are great for the main character of the story, and he's great in that role. He's like extremely engaging, and you're right there, you're with him, you're interested, you're invested in him. Everything about him is good. And that's made just even better by the fact that he's also kind of stupid, and he's also makes really bad decisions because he's so blinded by his rage and his quest for ambition that you just kind of want to smack him upside the head, be like, dude, stop it, you're being stupid. But that makes for an engaging protagonist in your story. It also makes for an engaging story. Then on the flip side of that, you have Askeladd, and he is just a really nice antagonist. I really liked him as an antagonist for the story because he is just brutal. He's mean. He's vicious. He's strong. There's literally no way that Thorfinn at this point in his life could even begin to hope to beat him. Then on top of that, he is the smartest man in the room. No matter what room he's standing in, he's pretty much the smartest man in the room. Then, on top of that, he's just dripping with charisma. So you almost want to like him. There are many scenes where you do end up just enjoying him, his character, and what he's doing and what he's saying because he's just such a charismatic guy, which adds this extra layer of complexity and complication to you, him, your feelings about him, because you want him to go down because of Thorfinn and because of Thorfinn's dad and their relationship, and you're on Thorfinn's side in this situation, but at the same time, there are many situations where you're just like, man, I just am enjoying watching Askeladd so much, I almost don't want him to die because he's such a charismatic bad guy. Then, on top of that, there's nothing two-dimensional about his character. To be quite honest, there's nothing two-dimensional about any of these characters. But you get backstory to him. You get backstory to his mom, his dad, his upbringing, and what makes him tick, and what makes him who he is, which just makes the black and white of Thorfinn versus Askeladd very many shades of gray. There is nothing black and white about it by the time Yukimura's done. He has this way of adding layers to everybody. Not that you ever really even consider switching sides. That's not it. It's just you can understand the motivations of the different characters and who's doing what and why, because they're all very layered, very nuanced, very well developed, very well fleshed out. Very good writing is what I would say. Hell, there's even times where you wish Thorfinn would just shut up for a minute and listen to Askeladd, and maybe he would just learn something every once in a while, and he would get better faster if he would just, listen. Get outside of his own head for 5 seconds. I know. I understand he's would be very difficult in Thorfinn's situation. But you, as the objective reader, you're just like, dude, stop it. Then looking more at the story side of it, like I said, it's great, and it pretty much hooks you right from the beginning, but it's very stereotypical, beat by beat. This guy killed my father, now I'm on a revenge story. It's kind of, for the first bits of it, it is very much generic, almost paint by numbers in the sense of how the story's played out, and the introduction and the flashback and all of this stuff, even to the point where I was reading this and my 11-year-old daughter, who I've got into reading manga since I've been reading it, like she's got all her own little like Demon Slayers and Spy Families and stuff now that she keeps up in her room. Anyway, she sees me reading this and she comes up to me, she's like, oh, what are you reading? I'm trying to describe it to her, and I'm going, well, you know, this and that, and it's about this boy and about this, and he's stuck with this guy, about the point where I get to the point in describing the story to her that I'm like, well, and then you come to find out the guy he's working for actually is the one who killed his dad. And she's just like, well, duh. Like, even an 11-year-old was like, of course that's how the story plays out. That's how they all work. So I'm like, man, it's not just predictable to me, it's predictable to an 11-year-old. Anyway, that doesn't change the fact that I still say that it's done quite well. Then on the flip side of that, I would also say that the fact that it's so predictable to begin with actually kind of lulls you into a sense of complacency, or at least it did me, because it kind of flips towards the end and throws you a couple curveballs, at least ones that I didn't see coming, because I was absolutely sure that Thorfinn was going to kill Askeladd, and he does not. I was quite surprised when that whole situation flips and Askeladd, like I said, being the smartest man in the room, completely loses control and grasp on his manipulation of situations, and then he ends up going down, and it's not Thorfinn who does it. I was really quite surprised when we got to that point in the story. So what I expected was, like I said, Thorfinn would kill Askeladd, then he would be still just as broken and hollow as he was before, and he would have to realize that nothing was fixed, and revenge brought him absolutely no closure. Now he's still going to have to learn how to live and become a whole normal human being after the revenge, because revenge gained him literally nothing. No. That's not what happened. Instead, that was robbed of him. Now he has to go into this next slave arc as a slave without that revenge, that, thing that he'd been fighting for his whole life. Now, not only does he not have it, that's been robbed from him. So now he doesn't even have the closure of realizing that revenge is bad and hollow. Now he's just got this other emptiness and hollowness to him, and he's going to have to learn how to live with that and still learn all the other lessons, all while being what, a slave to something? I don't know, or someone apparently. I don't know. It was great. It just kind of it was a new dynamic flipped on its head in a way that I really appreciated. It was pretty fresh. I was happy with it. I was quite genuinely satisfied with the way that actually played out. Also, before I'm done with the story here, is up with that prince? That prince is weird. Like, shows up, is completely ass backwards and completely turned around, and it won't even speak to people. And then by the time we're done with that plot line, the prince has a complete and utter mental breakdown, snaps, and now not only after snapping is he completely opposite of what he was in the beginning, but he's completely insane, completely unhinged. I don't know what he's doing or where he's going or what path he's got himself stuck on, but I don't like it. I don't trust him. I don't trust it. At first, I was quite sympathetic towards the prince character. Now I don't know where he's going or what he's doing, but I feel like he could be a menacing presence in the future, which is weird to say after reading this arc. I don't know. I don't trust him, though, and I don't trust where he's going. I feel like he's going to end up causing problems, or at least getting up to no good, because when he snapped into some weird, I don't know. But I will say, before I just leave it at that even him, with as little page time as he got, was quite understandable, quite relatable, quite believable why he would have ended up where he was in the beginning, why he would have snapped, and then why he ended up where he did. So even all of the characters, of what I'm trying to say, get quite a bit of depth and nuance to them, and I quite enjoyed it. It was just quite good character work in this story. Then I just kind of want to talk about the scope of this real quick, because it really feels a lot bigger than I kind of expected it to. Not only is it the Vikings versus the English, but there's like multiple different groups of Vikings, and then they're spread out over different lands in Iceland and here and there. They've even been to Vinland and back, or at least one of them has. Then when you get down to England, it's not just England. There's England and there's Wales, and there's already so many different factions and pieces and moving parts on the board that it feels a lot bigger and it feels a lot more complex than just, well, the Vikings invaded England. And I know that's how it actually would have been, but it's so easy for a story to dial it back to the simplistic one or two factions that you need to know about at that point in time. And we're already putting all the different pieces and countries and nations and kind of moving around and shifting around them. It feels big. It feels like there's a lot going on in this world. And I know, I mean, just by the names of like the Eastern Expedition arc, it's only going to get bigger from here. But already, like I said, just in this first little arc, it already feels quite big, quite nuanced, and I'm ready. I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to see where this goes. I'm looking forward to finding out where this goes, because I was so pleasantly surprised with this. I thought it would be good. I didn't have any thinkings that this was going to be a bad manga. It doesn't get to be called one of the big three and be bad. But I did expect my personal investment and enjoyment of it to maybe not be as high as it is. I don't know. I would say it's not like the greatest manga I've ever read. But I would say, if I had to put a number on it, which I always do because that's just how I do things here, I'm going to say a good solid 8. I had an 8 out of 10. I had a good time with this. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing where we go from here. Quite interested. Anyway, as always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.